Hello, boys and girls, boy and girl. um, my huge fan base. Anyway, um, what to talk about today? Well, I think I'm going to talk about 9/11. I was like, I don't know, 20, 21, and very naive, um, uneducated. Uh, I had done school education, and I watched things like National Geographic or whatever, Star Trek, but I didn't know anything about the world really. Uh, but I did know that controlled demolition doesn't happen by buildings getting hit by planes. Um, when I told people that it was fake, because I lacked better words, they would say things like, "Well, I was there. I seen ground zero. It wasn't fake." Well, I meant the enemy was fake. The narrative was fake. Um, but couldn't really describe it properly. What I did know was that the hospital I was born in went through a controlled demolition just a couple years before that. And at the time, there were only 10 people on Earth that could make our hospital fall that way. So by 9/11, to give you, I don't know, the benefit of the doubt, there might have been 20 people on Earth who could make a building fall like that. Um, so, so I immediately knew it was all staged and it was an inside job. And then there was so many other red flags, but those are the big ones. And if you have a building and a plane flies into the top of it, even if it could have broke the building totally in half in that section, this would have fell off or broke or even probably just crushed like that. And the rest of the building would have stood there, the base. Just common sense, really. I couldn't believe that people didn't get it. But they were into fear. So, because of their fear, they wanted to play it on the safe side and they would accept anything because they were too scared. What if it was Muslim terrorists? And what if our airports aren't safe? And what if our airplanes aren't safe? And all that. And movies helped a lot, building up to it. There was always these mastermind terrorists that could pull off amazing things in the movies, and then like one hero would save the day, whether it was Sylvester Stallone or Bruce Willis or whatever. uh, it was really something to go through. And then when COVID came around, I was obviously way more educated and could explain it better and did explain it better. And people would actually agree with me, but still go with their fear, to the point that they would pressure me to get vaccinated for fear of where my life was going. They feared so much that they feared on my behalf. They didn't fear me, but they feared for me. Like my mother, my sisters, my cousins, my other mother. And they just trust blindly in the government. The thing I find fascinating about that is most of us can't trust our own family. You can't trust your friends, but you blindly trust politicians that you've never met that get incredibly rich by being corrupt. So you wouldn't trust your cousin with your bank account information, but you're going to trust these strangers with everything, including your bank account information, and think it's fine. So much so that you pressure everybody else to do the same through stupid laws like unemployment, for example. You have to give them access by law to your bank records in order to get your unemployment. It's absolutely ridiculous. How could you have that much trust in strangers who stand to benefit by breaking your trust? And not just benefit a little, benefit in millions. Politicians go in to politics being worth 40, 50,000 and come out worth 20, 30 million. And nobody bats an eye. Everybody's just like, yeah, well, that's normal. How is that normal? And I've actually argued with people about this, and they'd be like, well, it's the prime minister or the president. They need to be able to afford to live that standard in order to run the country or whatever. And that was just with their pay. When I say they're paid too much, they keep giving themselves raises and doing a horrible job, but keep getting raises and make triple what the citizens make for actually working. Well, they need that. They have to, whatever, be able to fly on private jets and get around the world and do this and that. That's not coming out of their pockets. That doesn't, like, a prime minister doesn't take his paycheck and go buy a plane ticket to go to China and represent the country. The country pays for that flight. All of their money is just theirs. All of their paycheck can just be invested into stocks that they have power over. And it gets even more ridiculous when you looked at Doug Ford. He was explaining all the benefits. They all make enough money to drive cars, but they get free bus passes. They get free this, they get free that. They get all this extra stuff on top of their paychecks. All these bonuses and all these incentives like bus passes and whatever. I can't remember it all now, but it was a ton of stuff. And most of it was totally ridiculous. But we're paying for that. Like, they don't own the buses. It's not like they're just like, oh, well, we own this, so we're going to ride it for free because it's ours. No, it's a corporation and company, and it needs income. So they have to pay for the bus pass in order to give it to the politician who never uses it. So there's, for every politician, let's say it's $100 a year. Well, that's a lot of $100 a year just in the bus pass. Yet alone all the groceries and the other little incentives that they got. It was ridiculous. Um, the amount of waste, fraud, it's just unbelievable. I can't fathom that most people don't fathom it. Um, 9/11 was a lonely time because I felt like I was one of the only ones who seen it. It wasn't the big internet thing going on like there is now. There was a bit, but it wasn't anywhere near the community that there is now. So at least now with the COVID thing, there was thousands and thousands of people, hundreds and hundreds just on my own Facebook timeline who knew better, seen through it, and were standing together. So you didn't feel like you were the only one who was blind, like who wasn't blind, sorry. Um, and then when we went and restricted travel and you couldn't go to the States anymore without a passport and all these other things that came of 9/11, I was like, that was the goal. That was why they did it. It's why they allowed it to happen or made it happen. And then find out about the trillions of dollars and then find out about all the wars and why they went there and all the countries they invaded didn't have central banks. That's another reason why they needed a reason to fight those countries and get their banks in there. Uh, right up to the Taliban, they didn't have a central bank in that country. They wouldn't allow it. But once they did, Biden and whatever, the powers that be, left all that military equipment there. All those guns and planes and tanks and all that stuff, warehouses and buildings and airports, and gave it all to them. It was a signing bonus. You're going to have a central bank now? Well, here's everything you need to defend it. You're on your own, but you're not on your own because we'll be here to make sure that you can oppress your people in our name, basically. Not our as in America or Canada or the West. Our as in the central bank system. America's always fought wars over central bank systems. Most of them. Lincoln's war was also fighting the central banks. And he said, there's an enemy at my front who is the Southern Army, and an enemy at my back who are the bankers. And the one at my back is the greater enemy. And actually, France and England sent a bunch of ships over and were going to destroy the Northern Army. And King Nicholas of Russia sent his ships over and said, if you get involved in this fight, you're going to fight me as well. And they backed off. And then over the next 10 years, that whole entire royal family was destroyed and Russia was destroyed and led rise to Stalin. And they did sneaky assassinations. They did some of them where they were just assassinations, and obviously you know who's behind it, but it was a lone gunman. But or it was citizens outraged or whatever, but you know they were funded. And then Well, it was just a train derailment, just an accident, but that was on purpose. Um, but the problem is, most people don't even know that history, let alone anything about what happened to those men, or why, or that they even existed. And it goes back way further than you guys all think. Oh, the last 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. No, it goes all the way back to the book of Maccabees, King Herod, all those guys. See, in the book of Maccabees, the Jews reclaimed their land from Rome and gained independence. And then they were fighting all these wars, and they went and invaded Edom and converted the Edomites. They said you either have to convert to Judaism or leave the land. And a lot of them left the land, but a lot of them converted, which led to Jesus saying, the people who call themselves Jews but are not. That's who he was referring to, was these converted Edomites that pretended to be Jews. And Herod was one of them. That's why he married a Hebrew woman, because it gave him more validity to be the king. But he was always worried that somebody was going to usurp his throne or say that he was illegitimate because he wasn't of the blood Hebrews. And so he killed his wife's family, cousins, whatever. Killed like 5 of his own kids. A lot of them he strangled with his bare hands. When he heard about Jesus being born, he killed all the 2-year-olds, anybody 2 years and younger in all of Israel. That was all because he wasn't legitimate. He wasn't a Hebrew. He was an Edomite who called himself a Jew. When they were converted, the book says they were no different from Jews. Well, Edomites are descendants of Joseph. I always get Jacob and Joseph mixed up. No, so it was Jacob. They were Israel. They were twin brothers, Esau and Israel. And so Jacob, yeah, Esau and Jacob were twin brothers. Jacob was the heel grabber because his hand was on Esau's heel when he came out of the womb. Esau was named Esau because he was red and hairy. Well, whose babies are born red or hairy, but mostly red? You know, usually dies down after some time, that redness, but on the day of birth and for several weeks after, they are red. And apparently he kept a more red complexion and was exceptionally hairy, but it's pretty easy to see. And Jacob was just normal looking to the Hebrews with brass colored feet. So he just blended in, right? They didn't say anything about him. They didn't describe what he looked like because he looked like all the Hebrews. Anyway, the Edomites now run the central bank. Back in the day when Jesus was born and he was flipping tables in the temple, it was Edomites and manipulated Hebrews selling um, animals and sacrifices in the house of God. They made it into a money exchange. They've always been about money exchange. Their blessing is that they will dwell in the dew of the earth by the sword. So they need to be at war. It's like a prerequisite of them being blessed. So they're constantly at war. Whereas Jacob's blessing was that the dew of the earth will yield itself to him wherever he goes. Doesn't matter what land he's in. Well, where's the dew of the earth? It's in America. It's the most prosperous nation. It has all the resources and everything. Canada and the United States is just full of stuff. That's because the Hebrews are here. The 10 tribes, and they were put into diaspora and went across northern Europe towards Asia, and then they disappeared. Well, there's a land bridge from Asia, northern Asia, Russia, whatever, to America. So they crossed that land bridge, came to America, and simultaneously God released the floodwaters from places like the Grand Canyon, which we found the shorelines of 2 Great Lakes, they called them, that were 3 states. It's a lot of water. And that's just one spot. There's spots like that all over the earth. And in order to be able to walk anywhere on earth, you only have to drop the ocean, I think it's 20 feet, and you can walk everywhere. Australia, Galapagos, all the mainlands. I don't think you can walk to Hawaii, obviously, but all the main continents are connected just under the water. So like I said in the other videos, at the same time that the Hebrews crossed that land bridge, got to America, God raised the waters to hide or to block off the path so nobody could follow them. But simultaneously, animals like kangaroos, and koala bears and things like this got far enough into Australia and were ahead of the major predators enough that the water came up and the major predators were cut off from those lands so that the kangaroo could survive, that the koala bear could survive. And that's why they're nowhere else on Earth, because anywhere else on Earth, they would have just been easy prey. And they'd been wiped out. So as they came out from the ark and spread across the earth, the bigger predator animals didn't have to spread as fast. So there was prey everywhere. So it was fine for them to, and there was competition, but like that's why there's no wolves in Africa. There's dogs, but the wolf wasn't competing with the lion, so they just moved on. The kangaroo wasn't going to compete with the gazelle and the lion, so it moved on. And the ones that didn't move on were killed or starved. And then in God's great sovereignty, he timed it all out so that the Hebrews were protected and those animals were protected. And then he raised the water up. I'm sure that Christopher Columbus, as a child, probably went fishing with his grandfather, and they'd be way out on the water, and his grandpa would say, "This is where I lived when I was a kid." And Christopher would be like, "What are you talking about, Gramps?" He said, "Look down there." And then you could probably see his shacks. You could see the town, and or at least remnants of it. And so Christopher didn't think the world was round and he was going to sail to India, he said, in order for that water to rise, something had to displace it. There had to be land that came up somewhere else in order for the water to come up here. It's like when you get into the bathtub, the water rises. So we went out in search of that land. And then we're just told a story convincingly, and it's driven into you through brainwashing so that you wouldn't ever think of anything else. You just think, oh, I know, we know all this stuff. You don't know shit. The Vatican and the Smithsonian are full of history that we're not allowed to know. You're not even allowed to see it. Nobody's allowed to see it. Or very few people. I'm sure like there's certain families that can, in order to, and they're given certain information so that they can maintain their evil plan throughout the generations. But it wasn't something that just started. It's been going on for years, hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. They had more trouble enacting their plan when people knew more just through passing down knowledge. That's why when they brought the southern tribes over on slave ships, they separated the family, changed their names, and made sure that they couldn't pass that information down to their kids, so that then the kids would be manipulated into thinking whatever it is that they wanted them to think, rather than knowing what their past was. They didn't change their names because they were complicated to pronounce. There would be no purpose in that. Obviously, there's a bit of a ritualistic beating down of people, that when you whip them and say, you know, your name's Toby or whatever, that you're taking away that you're making them less, making them think they're less, and also making an example. If you read the books on how to break your slaves, it's horrifying. And it was written by Jews. The Jews told white people, you guys are slaves right now. All you Irish and Scottish and Americans, you're all slaves. Well, in order to not be slaves, you have to be sophisticated. And in order to get sophisticated, you have to own slaves. So we'll set you up with all these slaves in these farms, and you just pay us 10% off the top, but you'll eventually become civilized by owning slaves. You can find all of this in history. It's just difficult to find, but it was exactly what was going on. So the white so-called slave owners were just as manipulated as the slaves themselves, and were just slaves before that. And now they were making America and doing all this stuff. Well, the Jews knew that they needed Israel to be in one place and let the dew of the earth yield itself, and then they could take it. So they got them all in one place. The southern tribes and the northern tribes were in different continents, so they had to put them all on the same continent. And so they brought the southern tribes over, introducing them to the land, They let America get great and powerful and rich, and then they take that money and spread it around to all the Edomite-owned countries. That's why America and Canada, whatever, donate all these billions of dollars to other countries, especially Israel, because they made a deal. You guys can have all this and have all this money and have all this resource, but you have to send X amount of it back to us. We dwell in the dew of the earth by our sword, not you. You guys just process the dew of the earth for us and send it to us. And that's why no politician goes against them, because it's still in the deal. And in order to get to that level of like being the president, you've got to make those deals. They won't allow you to do it unless you're a part of their club. So thinking that Trump isn't part of their club is ridiculous. Now, I know they made it look like he's not because they fought him so hard and this and that. But that was all just a facade. Like WWF wrestling, when they made Hulk Hogan the good guy, and then they made him the bad guy, and then they made him the good guy, and then they made him the bad guy. They were just getting him to say different lines so that people would hate or love him, and manipulating how you see him. The whole establishment's against him and this and that. Not really. If they were actually against him, he would have been assassinated. They wouldn't have given him any publicity, good or bad. And they say, you know, any publicity is good publicity, right? Well, that's why they could give him negative publicity and still know he's going to win. And then they gave him to you, and he did good things, and he made the economy better and all this stuff. Then they took him away. They gave you the worst president of all time, and he destroyed everything way past. So then they could bring Trump back in, making you think he's going to make things great again. And, well, look what he's doing. He's obviously, just an Israel pawn. He's never going to make anything great for you or me. He's going to make things great for them and him. And he is doing some good things, you could argue, but those are dividing people. The things that he does that are slightly positive for the people are so divisive that it's dragging us further and closer to a civil war. It's not making things better. It's making things more it's adding fuel to the fire. I can't think of the word that I wanted to use there. More divisive. Had to think of it before I could move on, I guess. And the Titanic was actually another 9/11 for a different generation. But there was no such thing as internet or whatever, so they were able to get away with a lot more back then. So they could make their narrative seem better and hold it together a lot longer. But since then, we've all figured it out. Well, not all of us. People have figured it out, shared that information, And those that have eyes to see can see it. Their ultimate goal is a third world war. They make you seem like they don't want that, but that's exactly what they want. It's where they're driving us to. And they're driving us to it in order to separate us further from God, bring us closer to Satanism. That's why the Third World War will be fought between all factions of the earth, whether it's black, white, Jew, Muslim, atheist, Christian, whatever. And it's going to show that, well, it's not going to show, they're going to make it seem like it shows that all ideologies are incorrect except for theirs, Satanism. And that if we all go to Satanism, we'll all be able to get along because X, Y, Z, whatever, the rules of Satanism. And make their one world religion, one world government, and total world control. This was all written in 1871 and then released to the people, or they say it was leaked to the people in 1879 in order to get more people. They release information like that in order to get more people to will it into existence, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm feeding into their plan right now by telling you about it, because you'll be worried about it, you'll think about it, and it will happen. That's how it works. But you can also know about it, have faith in God, know that if there's a Satan, there is a God. You can't have one without the other. And that we're going to win in the end. And that it isn't a physical war, it's a spiritual one. Like, if two men are fighting and the one of them, woman, gets involved, gets in the middle, tries to break it up, does anything to be close to the action, the man whose woman that is going to lose, because now he's not only got to fight this guy and defend himself, he's got to defend her and get her away and get her into safety. Well, it's the same thing with the angels and the spiritual war, where we're just getting in the way. If you're trying to actually go out and fight this, you're just getting in the way. All you got to do is have faith that your man's going to win and watch the events unfold. I think there's a slim chance that with enough will we could stop this from happening, but people love their fear. They get overwhelmed with it. Look at 9/11, look at COVID, look at the Titanic stuff, look at all these events that have happened throughout history. And when the fear sets in, they'll let anything happen if it promises to stop whatever it is that's the bad guy. You know, there's criminals out there that have got guns, so let's take everybody's guns away, kind of thing. Which won't take the criminals' guns away. It'll just take your guns away. But you've got enough irrational fear that you think, okay, no, that's a good thing. Let's take away all the guns. You'll never take away all the guns. It's impossible. There's bad guys within the military, police force, things of this nature that are going to bring those guns to other criminals. And there's so many guns on Earth already in existence that they hardly need to do that. And then look at the Taliban thing. Joe Biden left warehouses full of guns for all of those bad people. They have no intention of taking the guns away from bad people. They want to take them away from the citizenry. And people will be scared enough by the bad people to think that it's a good idea and trust these politicians, which is what I was getting back to, or what I was saying at the first. How can you possibly trust these people? They're strangers that benefit from your lack in every way. And you blindly trust them and go on about them being good people, or this one's going to be the good one, this one's going to be that one, this the blah blah blah, new change, new regime, new this, new that. They're all on the same page and they're all on the same path. Doesn't matter which one you vote for, they're going to take you down that path in different directions, but the goal's the same, right? If there's two paths that lead to grandma's house, it doesn't matter which path you take, you're going to end up at grandma's house. It's like a horseshoe driveway. Should I take this driveway or that driveway? Well, does it really fucking matter? No, it doesn't. Anyway, I think I'm done for today. God bless. Have a good day, everybody. Try to stay enlightened and peaceful, and I guess I don't know what the advice is. The advice is to move out of society as far as you can and be prepared to go further. You're not going to win this war physically. You're going to win it spiritually. You got to have faith in God, put it in God's hands, and stand aside. Like I was saying about the two guys fighting and the girl getting in, you're the girl. Whether you're the big tough man or an actual girl, it doesn't matter. The angels are the men fighting the battles. And when you get involved, you just make it harder for the angel, because now he's got to protect you and try to win the fight. You can put this to the test in your own life. Next time you have a big problem, know that it's going to be okay. Walk through it. Keep your eyes on Jesus and know that it isn't the end. It isn't a horrible thing. It's just a stepping stone in your building. And you'll see it just vanish away. It'll solve itself if you don't react. Staying calm in every situation is a superpower. So stay calm.